Hello and welcome to chapter 30 of the book, The Great CEO Within. So, this is the last chapter of the book. What follows from the end of this chapter is the appendices section. So, you're going to have all of the supporting materials and sometimes templates. For example, you have here Appendix A, Summary of Conscious Leadership, and it provides that here. Again, we had a look at it earlier, and then you have the principles here. We also had a look at the principles, and Appendix B, you have the challenge of the technical founder, and C, you have recruiting process. We took a brief look at the recruiting process that he uses with alongside his team, and you have D, a sample area of responsibility AOR list, which we looked at somewhere in the middle of this course. You have Appendix E, Board of Directors. You have F to IPO or not to IPO. And you have Appendix G, Personal. Now, this is an important part for us to take a look at. So, when we're done with chapter 30, I'll briefly take a look at the Appendix G section because, again, we're looking at the mindset that a great CEO has so that if we are working with a CEO who is also implementing all of the things that Mochary has written about, then having an idea of what each of those processes look like will help us better support that CEO. Okay, so it says marketing can be defined understanding the problems of customers, that is strategic marketing, and what solutions are offered in the marketplace, that is competitive analysis. Creating a solution that more effectively solves the customer problem, product management, and letting customers know that your solution exists, which is tactical marketing. The essential goal of strategic marketing and competitive analysis is choosing your target beachhead. The essential goal of product management is achieving product market fit. And the essential goal of tactical marketing is growing sales. So we're going to treat strategic marketing first. So strategic marketing target beachhead, segment, target, promote. Segment, target, and promote. You have discovered a way to disrupt a massive legacy market. Just 1 minute. We should highlight this definition of marketing because I think it covers a good number of things that marketers are usually, the marketing team is usually concerned with. You have first the strategic marketing, you have the competitive analysis, and for the competitive analysis, that's one of the key deliverables that's done here is what is called market research. So I've done market research for a company before, and it was in fact my first experience working with an international team. I had to do the market research as a field researcher, so that meant going into the field, and the insights you get would influence the approach taken to solve the customer problems that we identify. So that is also related to product management because even in product market management, you also have to do market research. Then the last bit of marketing is what he now says, letting customers know, which is tactical marketing. So I think it was important to just highlight that again before going to strategic marketing. So you have discovered a way to disrupt a massive legacy market. You are the first to go after this opportunity and you want to get as many customers as you can, as fast as you can. Your first instinct is to reach out to any and all potential customers in the space. You may even have the thought that you want a few customers in each category around the world to mark your territory. Your primary fear is that other competitors rather will see the same opportunity and move faster than you. Now, this is going to serve as the concern that is the primary concern that is going to address in the preceding sections. So what do we have here? Oh, white highlighted. I'm not sure I highlighted. I didn't even get to this place in the first place. So maybe that's part of the book. But if it was pre-highlighted, then let's look at it. But history tells a different story. The greatest risk of a startup is not that they moved too slowly in dominating the entire marketplace, but rather that they spread their scarce resources too thin and ended up securing few or no customers at all. Every customer already has a legacy solution in place, and those legacy providers are far larger with more resources than you. They have deep and long-standing relationships with their customers. Even if your product or service is better, it needs to be 10x, 10 times better than the legacy solution for a customer to switch. So the 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 unstated thing is addressing here is that it's usually difficult for legacy buyers, that is people who are already committed to using a solution in a kind of way. If there is a major problem that we identify anytime in business, it says first, the chances are that people are already solving that problem in some way. Second, the chances are the whatever ways that people are using to solve that problem is what is called legacy. That is, people have been doing that thing for years and they know the company or the company is providing them that solution for years. So they're sort of stuck with that solution. For you to get them to switch, you have to be 10x better, not just better. And I think that is not just 10x better in terms of the product, it's also about 10x better in terms of marketing. Because people not only need to know that you have an alternative solution, they need to know that your alternative solution is going to solve their problems and maybe give them some bonuses if they switch. It's like when WhatsApp came. So people only had the opportunity to send SMSs and call. And then if you wanted to call someone outside the shores of your country, you would have to call them at a specific time. There was no asynchronous bit in that communication flow. You had to be at the right spot, the right time, so that when they call, you receive it. Or they had to be at the right spot at the right time so that whenever you called, they could receive it. It was the only solution available then. But at least people had a great confidence that if they made that call at the agreed time, that someone was going to pick it up. Because the chances that you would not pick it up meant that you would risk that communication in the first place. So it was a high trust communication process. But as soon as WhatsApp came, people needed to confirm, oh, does this actually work? By the time people started noticing that it worked, the bonus, I think, was that you could leave asynchronous messages. That is, if someone is online now and you send them a message, that message they would see if they were online. But if they weren't online and you send them a message, the message will still be delivered. And when they come online, they'll still see it. So I think that was a bonus because it gave people peace of mind. If I just text, you'll eventually see it, whether you are right there at the time I texted or not. Plus, the bonus part was people could call because the previous mechanism, that is calling by what was it, by the dialer or whatever it was called now, I don't quite remember. The previous method was really expensive. But then WhatsApp came and then it gave zero cost. That like zero call you cost. You could call somebody in UK, in Canada, in any country in the world that also had WhatsApp that also allowed WhatsApp access in those early days. And it was free. The only thing you needed to buy was data. And up till now, you still don't get to pay Facebook for using WhatsApp. You just only need data. So the advantages of using WhatsApp were tremendously high that in a matter of months, millions of people were on WhatsApp. And in years, centimillions were on WhatsApp. They were using WhatsApp because it was just 10x better than what people already had. So if you have that kind of solution, like the money is going to eventually pour in, and it doesn't require so much marketing. It's just like strategic marketing will be key. You don't have to spend so much on ads and all that. But such solutions are, should we say, generational? Because I mean, look at WhatsApp now, and look at how long it took us to journey in the digital age, like from the early 1980s when the internet became a thing, and WhatsApp started somewhere, was it 2007 or 2008? So it took like 20 or 30 years before we got WhatsApp, and another 20 or something years later, there there is very little competition to WhatsApp, so to speak. Of course, you have LinkedIn and so on, but WhatsApp is now the real thing when it comes to communicating internationally using text and call. So a solution other than WhatsApp would would have to do 10x better than what WhatsApp is currently doing now. Because many of us are so used to calling people on WhatsApp. WhatsApp is now the legacy solution for international calls, whether synchronous or asynchronous. So, and a solution that would beat WhatsApp as a messaging platform in that sense is going to maybe come in the next decade or thereabouts. Who knows? But the point is that solution is going to need to beat WhatsApp right now because we're so used to WhatsApp. So he says, because every legacy customer already has a legacy solution in place, you need to beat them 10x better. Therefore, rather than go after the entire market at once, the key is to find a small segment of the market, that is, a set of customers with similar pain points that has a particular difficult problem for whom your solution is indeed 10x better than the broad non-specific legacy solution. So what's it saying here? It says because legacy, like beating the legacy solution is going to be so hard. You'll be exhausting your resources in those early days. Your best bet is to target a percentage of the users of that solution and try to beat that legacy solution by 10x. So if you can beat the target size, your small percentage of users of that legacy solution, then maybe you can expand. And I think WhatsApp started like as a messaging platform, then they started doing calls. But I know the first bit WhatsApp rolled out was messaging, and immediately they did calls, and it wasn't until like sometime later they did recording your audio and leaving it to them. And then they increased the number of files that you could share on WhatsApp and so on and so forth. So always start, it says, with a percentage, a smaller target than the entire um, market size. This is your low hanging fruit. Concentrate all your efforts on this type of customer to maximize your chance of getting your first few customers. Once you do, you will then have a track record to share, be able to raise more money and hire more engineers to create more features and more salespeople to develop more relationships. Continue focusing on this first type of customer until you have secured many, if not most, of them as your customers. Then use your now larger amount of resources to move to the next to the next lowest hanging fruit. So start with a small size of the market and then move upwards. Okay. A good analogy is the Allied invasion of Europe during World War II. The Germans held the whole coastline. The Allies could have chosen to spread their invading force along the entire shore. If they had, they would have had one boat per beach. The Germans, the Germans' pillboxes would have slaughtered each and every Allied soldier that landed on French beach. That, of course, is not what the Allies did. Instead, they studied the coastline and found the beach that was the least well defended, which was Normandy. They concentrated all their forces on that one target beachhead and so were able to overwhelm the German defenses there and secure the toehold they needed. From there, the Allies were able to bring in more resources, expand out, and eventually spread throughout Europe. I watch a lot of World War II movies because I, aside from the fact that I just want to see how we as a species got to a point where we were ready to slaughter millions of people on the basis that they did not have a, a similar belief as others. Like they just were from one line of ancestry. So the Germans said of the Jews and so much hated of the Jews and blaming the Jews for everything. So not to venture into World War II, but I think it's one of the most ugly experiences of or expressions of humanity and our desire to control things. World War II is one of those things, and so I think I like and can easily relate with the lesson, the analogy of the beachhead used here. So do the same. Study the marketplace, segment it into different customer types, determine which segment is the least satisfied with their current solution, and for whom your solution is the best fit. Concentrate all of your sales and engineering efforts toward this segment. Land a few of these customers. Continue to focus on this segment until you dominate it. Only then expand to other customer segments or add other products. So, the best way to choose a target beachhead is to follow the steps outlined in the book Disciplined Entrepreneurship by Bill Olet. Disciplined Entrepreneurship by Bill Olet. Okay, so product market fit is the next section. Let's take a look at this book. At least we get to see who has written it. Yeah, this is it. 24 Steps to a Successful Startup. We definitely want to read this one. And there are several reviews of the book already. You could even get a copy of the book for free. It appears you can, IIT Jammu, and so on and so forth. You could easily just get the book on Amazon as well. But the book is popular. There are several covers of the book here. And not to mention, if you go to YouTube, you would also see that many people have written about it already. So it must be a very interesting book. And any book that recommends is actually very good. I need to get to a point where I'm reading all of those books. And so maybe I'll just continue. After this one, I'll look at all the books that he has referenced because the point is to increase my and hopefully yours, because as I do this, it is adding to my knowledge and hopefully my skill to execute. But I also to, as you also read and follow the book, that it's doing the same thing to you. So if we continue reading about other operational and business books like this, then it will have the added advantage of making us better operators in business, or at least better founders. So product market fit. The first major stage of a company's life is getting to product market fit. This means designing a significantly better solution to your target customer's problem than exists in the marketplace. Do not try to scale, spending precious resources on sales, DevOps, etc., until you have proof that customers believe your solution is indeed better. When that moment arrives, it is called product market fit. Now, product market fit, as he has defined in this book, is reaching financially 1 million ARR. So that's roughly $100,000 in sales monthly. So if you get to that point, then it says you can scale. But very few businesses get to that point in their early years. So that means that you can have other forms of proofs, and the minimum viable product is the fastest way to get to proof. It doesn't speak about the MVP a lot in this book. And I think the reason that might be is because for people who get to be coached by Matt Mochary, they are not people who are so early in the stage of the business that reaching 1 million ARR will be pain points. They're like people who have funding and whose businesses have a certain level of success or potential success than the average business that is just trying to to make it to MVP early enough at the start, so that then they can start to target their product market fit. So for him, the businesses that are in the early stages, that even if you're not at product market fit, the first stage for Mark Mochary is just getting to product market fit. That's what I understand for now in this book. But how do you know you have achieved product market fit? Ask your customers, they will tell you. They will also vote with their wallets by renewing your subscriptions, buying more product, etc. That's how you know you've got into product market fit. If you're selling to businesses, don't think that initial contracts indicate PMF. They don't. Businesses have significant budgets set aside for testing new products, but that's all this initial contract is, a test. The only time you will know that that customer actually wants to buy your products is when they sign the full long-term contract. So it says, just ask your customers. If you get to 1 million ARR, then you have product market fit. But then it says, if you are a B2B company and you get to 1 million ARR with your first few clients, that you shouldn't count that as an indication of product market fit. Instead, what you want to count as a strong indication of product market fit, or an indication truly of product market fit, is if you have a long-term contract with those B2B customers, because already those guys have the money to put in to test your products. So if they test the initial test, like you have 1 to 3 companies, and the initial test purchase capacity in your first year, serving them, testing and serving them, because you're also testing and serving them too, in that first year is 1 million ARR, and you think that you have product market fit, that's really too early to make that judgment call, because these guys were already prepared to spend that money anyway. But you know that they are committed to using your solution if they give you a long-term contract. That's how you know for B2B companies that you have product market fit. So if you're selling to consumers similarly, you will know that you have PM fit when customers order a second time, renew subscription, give you a high NPS score, tell their friends about your product on social media. So this part is really good. This distinction is very helpful, I think. So let's highlight it. One of the bigger mistakes that young companies make is thinking that they have PM fit before they really do. They then raise a lot of money, hire a big team, both sales and engineering, and spend big dollars on promotion. Once they later realize that they don't actually have PM fit, it is then much more difficult to iterate on the product. Larger teams are less nimble than smaller teams. That is, larger teams are not so interested in iteration as well as smaller teams, because for larger teams they already want that stability in just managing the product and continuing with customer success. But smaller teams are really into making that product great, because they want to get to a point where that product is in the market and then they're seen how successful they are. But not so with larger teams. They already think they're successful. That's what I think it says there. And morale drops precipitously. People who join companies with perceived product market fit do not want the uncertainty of a pre-M fit experience. Yeah, that's what we just explained. So the key is to keep the team small until product market fit is achieved. A good number to think of is 3 to 6. If 3, it would look like if 3, it would look like a CEO who is engaged with potential customers and 2 engineers. If 6, it would look like a CEO who is engaged with potential customers, 3 engineers, a designer, and an operations person. That operations person, you see, I'm smiling now. That operations person can be anybody, but also the virtual or executive assistant, especially if this person cannot afford to have a core operations person. They can have a virtual assistant from the international market at a much lesser rate, and then just keep things small, including their budgets small, their expenses small, till they get product market fit. And if you're like level CEO, some cocos, he could have like 5 years, even though now his company can afford it. He still has like 5 years for different resources. I think he says he has more now. The last time I watched it, I think that was with um, David Perel. In the interview with David Perel, he says he has a lot more than 5 now. So he says, I strongly recommend not going beyond 6 team members before you have PM fit. You will only burn money, destroy morale, and slow yourself down. I strongly recommend. So let's give this a read so we can always see it anytime. Departments. So what are the departments you want to have? So you have an executive, you have chief of staff. Now, he used to like this word so much, but I think the word he uses now is exec ops, that is executive operations. But in the early days, like when he earlier released this book, I think it was chief of staff, because I noticed that in the first part of the book, he says now exec ops. The other resources he has written about is as exec ops, called formerly chief of staff. So I like this term, chief of staff. I think it goes straight to the point, because you also have chief of staff in governments too. So the role of the chief of staff is really that person who is between the president and the other staff. So I think in business too, the role of a chief of staff is that person in between the personal and professional bits of the CEO's life. So if you find that you are simply not completing the goals you set for yourself each week, or you do so, but some or many of the tasks are energy draining, then it is time to hire a chief of staff. Mark Olgan, CEO of Infinitive, gives a thorough description of COS best practices in his first round blog post. To me, 2 priorities in creating a great COS are their background, and 2, how you train them. 2 priorities, it says, are their background and how you train them. So, background. The best COS that I have seen are highly organized, excellent communicators, both written and oral, and have broad strategic business knowledge. A background that almost always ensures these skills is 4 to 8 years at a top management consulting firm, Bain, BCG, and McKinsey. Of course, most international VAs don't have this, but That's why I haven't seen so many companies recruiting. Maybe I haven't seen so many companies recruiting chief of staff from international VAs like the advertised for VA positions. I think many of these companies would rather you start out with operations assistants as a VA or EA, and then you enter into chief of staff. But if you already have this background in any of these things, I think you have a great shot, because if someone like McKinsey says that you have it, then you have it. I don't have one. What I have is just a course from McKinsey. That is the McKinsey course. So I am partial to Bain, as I find ex-Bain consultants also have excellent financial model skills, akin to those they have learned and are they and are learned akin to those they would have learned had they worked as an associate at an investment bank. Training. The key to give your COS, Chief of Staff Unfettered, the key is to give your COS, Chief of Staff Unfettered, access to all the information that you receive. That's why VAs usually get access to emails. So Chief of Staff also says give access, unfettered access to everything. Of course, if you want to have a Chief of Staff, then you must be ready to trust someone with that responsibility, because there's no point having a Chief of Staff whom you do not trust with unfettered access to your gamut of information that comes to you or that you also respond to. This means having a sit or him sit beside you from morning till night with full access to your emails, calls, meetings, etc. By seeing what decisions you make based on what information you have, she will soon be able to think like you, and then he can truly be an extension of you, and magic will happen. After several weeks of observing your COS, you can start they can start to take tasks off your plate. Within several months, she or he will be able to do all the tasks that don't give you energy or that you simply don't have the bandwidth to do. Most senior candidates are not attracted to the COS role because they view it as an assistant role. And it's and for many companies it is. When recruiting, dispel this concern by showing the candidate that they will have full access to all the information that you do. This is the single best training to becoming a CEO. So the chief of staff, as I said, is a senior role to an EA. That is why I think he expresses the concern that most COS candidates worry that most like senior people who qualify for COS roles are um, are not so excited about it because they think that it's just going to be an assistant role. But if you convince them that it will have access to all the information that you have. Um, and as a VA, if you see yourself having access to all the information, a good amount of information that the CEO has, then you can be sure, and if you work well, you can be sure that you can move up that ladder into COS and do equally well, or maybe better than you did as a VA. So it says it's not a role that's often admired by experienced people, but if you can assure them that they will get access to all the information, because the COS role is usually by somebody who is also thinking of becoming something like a chief operations officer in a company. So um, that's that many people who are experienced enough to be COOs, if you tell them to come and be COS, they might think it's not what they want to do, because they wouldn't be living the work that they envision in their minds. So you give them all these resources that you have access to. What Mochary is saying is that that person can feel that they're also performing a senior role like they would do a COO, Chief Operations Officer role. So you have BizOps, that's business options. As your company quickly scales, the young people you hired early in the company's life cycle will be asked to manage bigger and bigger teams. Some will learn to be good managers fast enough, others won't. In dealing with those who don't, you will be in a difficult situation. You want to be transparent with them that they are not succeeding. And then when you decide to layer them, you will also want to be transparent with them. They will find out anyway once you start recruiting, and will feel betrayed if you didn't already inform them. So they can be your partner in the search. So I think the point he's making here is pretty clear. So you want to have younger people in the company that you hired early, like the Vs. You want to have them manage bigger and bigger tasks. And eventually, as the company grows, you can move your VA into level CEO. Sam Coco says this, that they had a VA who they relocated eventually to come work full time in the company. So if you work as a VA with someone for a while, you might fit this description is making, that's being trusted to move up. And if you think you're doing an excellent job and you're not trusted, and eventually the CEO starts searching for somebody who will be doing what you may be promoted to do, then you're going to feel bad about it. So that's why it says inform them ahead of time if they do not move up to a position where they can manage teams. Inform them ahead of time so that you can manage that expectation. So you will likely feel fear that they will feel demotivated and perform even worse or leave before you're able to hire, train, and onboard their replacement. This fear is usually overblown, as most young managers look forward to learning from someone more experienced. Yes, that's true. But whether or not you feel this fear, the reality is that you want the team's performance to improve now, and recruiting a new manager from the outside will take time, much more time than you would like. So, how do you improve your team's performance now? There is an answer. In Silicon Valley, major tech companies such as Google and LinkedIn built up functions called business operations. The functions were staffed mainly by top tier consultants from Bain, McKinsey, and BCG. Oh, okay. So maybe this is where I got the idea by looking at Google and LinkedIn, how they built up their business operations department. I first encountered BizOps at Coinbase, where Emily Choi scaled the group out as the company was going through hypergrowth. The team was viewed as mini CEOs who could, one, parachute into any problem area, and dig in and fix it. Generally help build and drive processes that help the company scale, including running quarterly business reviews, OKRs, etc. When a manager was not succeeding, they could join the team and take over the project and people management duties while keeping the former manager as the architect. That is, the subject matter experts who determine the roadmap. These are the things that we need to get done, and this is how to do them. So that manager wasn't performing just becomes someone like a consultant, me consultant, like with the internal consultant. The BizOp guys. So these BizOp guys are the ones who then these mini CEOs that he describes are the ones who then manage the team to ensure that they completed the roadmap, effectively run any meeting and train managers how to do so, act as chief of staff or uh, chief of staff to the CEO. So it says that what people do um, to get the best of the young guy, I think that's the point here, is that they create a business operations department. And then the functions were staffed mainly by top tier consultants from being McKinsey. I first encountered Bezos at Coinbase, and the team was viewed as mini CEOs. So this function has been a big success for Coinbase. I highly recommend that you create such a function. So it says here you want to have a department called BizOps, and then you want to fill them in with guys who have consulting experience, who can get things done, and be the team that helps both manage people and then execute things in cases where you have managers who aren't doing successfully well at both managing people and then executing. So if you have a manager, of course, whom you do not want to fire, because that would mean that that manager is still useful in the company. So you have that manager take a back role as subject matter expert and then determine the roadmap And then these BizOps guys will manage the people and then the operation. And these BizOps guys are people who you would want to have as chief of staff to the CEO. So product. In a technology company, product manager is arguably the most important position in the company. For this reason, in the past decade, most unicorns have been started by technical founders where at least one has the ability to play the role of product manager. A product manager is someone who both has the social skills to sit with customers and is or can learn to be technical enough to know what can and cannot be done technically. Whether the product manager has to have a background as an engineer is a hot point of contention. Some say that there is no other way. Others say that it doesn't really matter. From my experience, technical knowledge is very helpful. However, it is not a deal breaker, especially if the product manager has a good relationship with the technical lead and they can solve problems honestly and efficiently. So on product management, I just started a course on it, and I do not have technical expertise in terms of software development or software engineering, but I think my people skills is fairly strong enough to manage a tech lead, because from what I've learned, at least you have the product manager, you have the product designer, and then you have the product developer, the product engineer. That's a division that's currently being used at Pendo. Pendo is a product management company. So Pendo says, the guys at Pendo say, you need the product manager who may not be a technical um, person. But if you have the product manager who can build a very good relationship with the product designer and then with the product developer, then you have a solid team, a solid product team. Another distinction that I've seen is a 4-point distinction. You have the product manager, you have the product designer, you have the product developer, and then you have the product marketer. So you move, so the product manager manages these three other people. So I think technical know-how is good, but as it says, it's not a deal breaker. What will be as important, if not more important, is the ability to manage these two other relationship or these three other relationship. That is the product designer, product developer, and product marketer, or two. That is the product designer and the product developer. So the role of the product manager is to sit with real life potential. So let us highlight that. The role of the product manager is to sit with real life potential. Let's make this thicker. Okay, sit with real life and actual customers and deeply get to know the customer's life and problems. This was one of the things that I did as a field market researcher. You have to go into the field and then meet actual people and have conversations with them. And we met many. Because the product manager is technical, she or he knows what features are possible and how hard or easy they are to create. And they can then list a set of features that will solve a customer's deepest problems. The product manager then gives an initial order to that list of features according to the value they bring to the customer and the difficulty for the engineering team to create. So it's saying here that there will be a prioritization. That's what it means by initial order. That's the list of features according to, yeah, that's what it means. Then lead the product meeting that brings together engineering, who have to build it, and sales and marketing, who have to sell it, to determine the final order of the feature list to be built. High value, low cost features clearly come first. High cost, low value features clearly come last. The debate is in the middle. And here, the right answer is most often high value, high cost, because low value before low value, low cost. So the answer that comes to the point is high value, high cost before low value, low cost. So the product manager gets to 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 learn the problems and then to understand what customers think the solutions are, and then meet with the engineering team to understand the difficulty of solving those problems. And alongside every other relevant person, like the sales team, they get to determine the prioritization. That is how the product roadmap, essentially, the product roadmap, how they go from building the first full version of the product, and then iteration continues. That's one of the differences between product management and project management. In product management, it continues. In project management, it ends when the project is delivered. But in product management, of course, you have iteration and more version. It continues. And if the app or the product becomes worldwide, like Facebook and so on, then you have different types of managers in the company. So the third thing that the product manager does is map out wireframes, which are illustrations of what the feature will physically look like when completed. I think this is the role of the product designer, at least from what I've learned from Pendo. And they also figure out the specifications, how the features functions for each feature, so that engineering has a visual and functional picture of what they need to build. Engineers do best when given a very specific endpoint. Allow them the room to figure out how to get to that endpoint, but be very clear about what the endpoint is. Number three requires a lot of time spent with engineering to get their feedback as to whether the wireframes and specs are complete enough to give the direction needed. Engineering is the customer in this exercise. For this reason, there is often a tendency to think that product should report to engineering. This would be a mistake. This part is important. So let's give it that recognition here. Okay, product must have the final authority. That is, the product manager must have the final authority in the discussion around feature prioritization. If either engineering or sales marketing has the authority, the decision will get skewed. Ideally, therefore, product is its own department and reports directly to the CEO. So this is what he's saying, Mochary is saying. In some companies, you have product guys report to the VP of product, and then the VP reports to the CEO. But he's saying here that the product department should report directly to the CEO. If for some strange reason product cannot report directly, and he says it would be a strange reason, product cannot report directly to the CEO, then better to have it report to the sales and marketing, to have it report to sales and marketing. It is critical that the voice of the customer, which the product manager is, remains strong within the company. This voice almost always gets lost if product reports to engineering. Best of breed, he says, the best product managers also paint a picture for engineers of why this feature is actually needed by customer. Engineers are smart. They want to know what they are building has actual value. To do this, complete end user profile described in disciplined entrepreneurship. Clearly show in writing how this feature will solve a significant problem for the customer. So this book again is alluded to under operations and product management. So this is a book that we want to read. So that book again is Disciplined Entrepreneurship. So engineering, product engineering. For most startups, the biggest challenge in engineering is managing the team once it grows beyond 3 to 4 engineers. A good engineer is often not a good engineering manager. There are 3 functions within engineering: architect, project manager, and individual contributor. Project management is the essential of the engineering manager. Good engineering management is a rare skill and most often can only be learned by observing others who do it well. Therefore, hire an engineering manager with experience at a company with a reputation for excellent engineering management, Google, Facebook, Apple, etc. Engineering managers with this pedigree will be hard to convince and expensive to win. Make the effort pay the price it's worth it. So it just says it's going to be hard to get them. Yeah, but it's going to be worth it. Okay, so it says there are three functions within engineering. You have the architect, you have the product, um, the so you have the project manager. Okay, project manager and an individual contributor. Project management is the essential of the engineering manager. So it says you want an engineering manager who has a hang of all these three, because it says the best engineers are not necessarily the best engineering managers. So you want to have engineering managers, even though they'll be hard to win over to come work for your company, especially if you're a startup and you do not have all the benefits that they may have enjoyed at a bigger company like Facebook, Apple, or Google, or Tesla. So when you bring them in, however, it becomes worth the price. Another common problem is that adding engineers often adds significant coordination challenges. These challenges often create a net drag on productivity. Unless you have a superior manager, a team of 3 to 4 excellent engineers is often more productive than that same team with an additional 3 to 4 average engineers. Excellent engineers, 3 to 4 excellent engineers, he says, is better than like 6 to 8 average engineers. In order to manage an engineering team effectively, a good tracking tool must be used. Just as in sales tracking, the industry standard is Jira by Altation. Once you get to 10 to 25 engineers, this tool is a must, but it requires knowledge and time to use properly. When the team is smaller, I recommend using a lighter weight tool. Okay, that's that on engineering. Now, human resources. We've looked at the major function of human resources previously, which is recruitment. So now we're going to look at human resources fully. So human resources on the HR side, there are specific laws that must be adhered to when hiring and firing. One can take the time to learn these laws, not recommended, or you can simply outsource the process. There are two ways to outsource the HR process. One, use online broker like Zenefits to manage the documentation and purchase benefits, medical, dental, disability, and life insurance. Or two, use PEO, Professional Employer Organization, like Sequire One or Trinet. If you use a PEO, members of your team become employees of the PEO firm. I recommend using a PEO from the beginning until the company reaches 100 to 150 people in size. Wow, this is the first time I'm learning of this professional employer organization. Professional employer organization. So he explains, a PEO firm has thousands of employees, therefore can get far better pricing benefits, insurance, than a small company with less than 100 employees. Additionally, a PEO firm takes on all the employee liability risk. If an employee is let go and sues his employer, he sues the PEO. Your company is not involved at all. The PEO ensures that they will not lose such a lawsuit by adhering 100% to HR law. The PEO is expert in this type of compliance. Between Sequoia One, the second largest PEO, and Trinet, the largest, we far prefer Sequoia One. Trinet is a dominant player and uses its market power in manipulative ways. If you sign up with Trinet and later want to move off of their service, when you get to 100 to 150 employees, they make it very difficult for you to do so by not sharing their historical records with you. Sequoia One has the "we are nicer" approach and allows you to easily leave their platform when you want to. Once a company has reached 100 to 150 employees, it can achieve similar prices for benefits, and it can afford to hire an HR specialist. Then this is then it is time to switch back to the company being the employer and providing the benefits directly using Zenefits or something similar as the information platform. This allows team members to direct their questions to an HR specialist that is on site rather than off-site. What I would say is for organizations that are looking for VAs, they usually I don't think they're hiring directly, so they're usually not a member of a PEO. And for organizations looking for VAs, many of them are not even on up to 100 to 150 employees. They are way less than 100. They're usually small startups, and they are doing something less than 50, right? And one of the reasons they're even looking for VAs in the first place is because they're looking for qualified professionals who can help them achieve certain things that they would otherwise not be able to do because they can't afford to hire um, people who are better qualified within their country of origin. Say, for example, a US firm looking for a virtual assistant will be paying that assistant somewhere along $5 or $6 for the start. And then if they were to be paying for that same role using someone in the US, they'll be paying roughly $20 to $25 per hour. So the companies who are hiring VAs, many of them do not fit into this description anyway. But what he says is it's better if you get to a point where you are running at 100 to 150 that you have an HR specialist. So this HR specialist is then the person who gets to manage every other thing that the company is involved with. Now, are there exceptions to these things? Yes, there are exceptions, but the exceptions is not what we are primarily concerned about. So what benefits to offer? This depends on the types of team members being recruited. From the team members' perspective, benefits are paid pre-tax dollars, effectively doubling their purchase power. Discover what your team members truly value: medical insurance, meals, retirement plan, gym membership, commuting allowance, etc., and then give them those benefits. Of course, the cost of the benefits should be taken out of the overall compensation number. First, startup cash plus equity plus benefits should equal market compensation, which also should include benefits. If PEOs are so great, why aren't they used more often in startups? Good question. We think that most founders just don't know about them. Also, simple online tools like Gusto and Zenefits make the process of hiring and paying employees so easy that most founders stop there. The thought of lowering HR liability and reducing benefits costs comes later. And by that time, the CEO is focused on other more pressing issues like product. It usually takes a full-time CFO, Chief Financial Officer, to make the change to a PEO. But the CFO often only arrives once the company has 50 plus employees, and then the benefit of a PEO is not nearly as great. Instead, I recommend starting with a PEO when the benefit is highest, the beginning. So let's look at finance. A company needs to track its revenue and expenses, income statement, as well as its assets and liabilities balance sheet. The task is easy enough in the early days that a full-time person is not needed. So it is best to outsource this function. There are SaaS accounting tools like QuickBooks Online is the current default. It says for for him or maybe most other companies that make this process seamless. There are many outsourced accounting shops that will do this work offsite for a reasonable fee, less than $2,000 per month. However, just like with legal, the work product improves significantly if the work is done on site because of better communication and oversight. So choose an outsourced CFO or accounting firm that is willing to send a person to your office once per month or week to do the accounting work. In addition, a company should be creating a projection of both its finances and its operations, number of types of employees, amount of office space, etc., as well as tracking the metrics of the team. This is considered CFO level work. I think it keeps going back to this CFO role. And as the company, as the organization is growing to like 25, 50, then the CEO, the CFO's work becomes even more important. So the bottom line is have somebody in-house, whether outsourced or not, who will be taking care of this financial responsibility, at least till you have a CFO. So it says this is considered CFO level work. And any good CFO can also do the accounting work. So we recommend hiring an outsourced CFO firm rather than an outsourced accounting firm. Potential investors take great comfort in seeing that a company has created real projections, which is a signal that the company won't be blindsided by unforeseen occurrences in the future. So, just like with legal, we recommend finding a good outsourced CFO early on, who will agree to come work at the company for 1 day per month. In that amount of time, we find that she can do both the accounting work as well as the CFO work and still charge no more than an outsourced accounting firm, which is $200 per hour for 10 hours equals $2,000. So just like with legal, we recommend finding a good outsourced CFO early on who will agree to work for the company. My current favorite outsourced CFO shop in San Francisco is Buckland and Associates. So legal. There are several actions within a company that require the help of a lawyer. If at this point you've noticed that I'm not explaining as frequently as I'm doing before, is because I am really just learning some of these terms like the PEO for the first time. So it's important for us to just digest more of what we're reading. There are several actions within a company that require the help of a lawyer. Negotiating and documenting investments, whether safe or preferred equity. Establishing hiring and firing procedures to comply with HR law, negotiating and signing customer contracts, non-disclosure agreements, and commercial contracts, obtaining visas for foreign team members, etc. There are many large multidiscipline law firms that are very similar to investors: Wilson, Sonsini, Cooley, Orrick, Fenwick, Goodwin, Proctor, etc., and with whom investors feel comfortable. Therefore, it is a good idea to use such a law firm to document the preferred equity documents. The additional cost for this law firm is more than paid for by the benefits in making the investor feel comfortable. So it just says, I think one of the things he has established so far is that you should hire like experienced guys who have shown a track record for excellence. Though it's going to cost you more, but it helps you avoid all the risk associated with using people who are not so experienced or who are average players. And as a VA working with a CEO who has this mindset like Mochary, the thing you have to know is you have to be top of your game in the role that you're playing. And you're also going to be working with other people who are top of their game. So the culture of excellence that eventually rubs off you and helps you to get better. And if you work excellently enough, you learn more from that team and all that. You get to build together and you become someone better than uh, someone who can ascend to chief of staff role or even go on to another company and do operations work or project management or product management because you've built core experience working with excellent guys as a VA in one firm already. So, however, that is where the utility of using the big law firm ends, where the big law firm has the resources to do every kind of legal work the company has. The amounts that they will charge for this work, in our experience, about 10x what could be achieved by working with specialist boutiques and solo practitioners. And the specialists usually do better. So the key is to find a solo practitioner to be your outsourced general counsel early on in the company's life cycle. I prefer to find a lawyer who lives and works close to the company and then require that they come into the office to do their work and only bill for their time physically at the company. If there is a need to do work outside the company, I recommend that you only pay for it if the lawyer has gotten specific written permission, email in advance for both the work and the hours to be billed. I read this and it just increasingly occurs to me that Mochary is very detailed. Like he has a system, a process for nearly everything. Imagine paying a lawyer for only the hours they come to work in for you. If they get to work outside, they have to get your permission via email in advance for both the work and the hours to be billed. So that's a very detailed CEO there. If you don't follow this strict, and he calls it strict procedure, then the lawyer can bill for whatever amount of hours they claim the work took. You will have no way of successfully disputing their claim, and you will be on the hook for the bill, even if it is outrageous, which it almost certainly will be. Solo practitioners are happy to follow these guidelines. Large law firms never agree to them. And because lawyers from large law firms do not come on site, the amount of time they spend on an issue, or at least claim that they spend on an issue, goes up by 5x over someone who is on site. And on top of that, large law firm billing rates are about 2x those for solo practitioners. And you get a bill that is 10x larger and a work product that is often inferior. Once you have an outsourced general counsel who comes to your office to do all your legal work, if a different specialty is needed, say immigration, employment, etc., they can find and manage that specialist for you. So, best legal approach, get an outsourced solo practitioner as your general counsel early on. So what do we have here? Essential reading. The problems encountered in starting, growing, and running a company have been encountered by thousands of CEOs before, and luckily, dozens of successful CEOs and business leaders have written down their lessons learned in book form. These books teach us almost every important aspect of running a business. While there are hundreds of such books, the following are my favorites, and I consider them required reading for any CEO or manager. In the remainder of this book, I will share with you the main concepts from each of these books, but they go much deeper than I will here. Please do read them at some point. Individual productivity, getting things done. Yeah, he alluded to this much earlier, I think in chapter one. And then he provides a link to a good summary of it. And it says its author, David Allen, 10 hours. Number one, the number of hours required to read this book. 10 hours getting things done. Wow. Personal productivity. I mean, how long is it taking me to read this one and then talk through it? Well, maybe if you minus the I would say it's like 50-50. Talking through it is like 50-50. So at the end of this series, I am going to do the number of hours it took me, like in video, both reading and the actual videos, and then divide it by two. Then maybe I'll get roughly the actual number of hours it took me to read this book. But the production hours are, of course, maybe like times two of all the hours that it took me to produce the videos, that it took me to record the videos. Personal productivity describes using personal productivity describes using pen and paper. Simply translate that to Evernote or another electronic tool. Using the system will make you sleep better. It takes several days to fully implement the system, but it is very much worth that investment. Okay, so that is an explanation. It's about personal productivity, describes using pen and paper. Simply translate that to Evernote. Okay. Organizational productivity. 1 Minute Manager. Great book. I think this is one of the first few books that I'm going to be doing after this one, reading after this one. So 1 Minute Manager, then it provides a link to a summary. It says author is Blanchard is going to take you 5 hours, zero point 0.5 hours, zero point 0.5 hours. I don't get what 0.5 hours means, but um, I think he said earlier that this book, 1 Minute Manager, was going to take um, How many minutes? Did he say 30 minutes then? This first round link isn't opening. Let's try this one. The 1 minute manager. So, so this is a copy from Internet Archive and it has 96 pages. Oh, this is definitely not going to be a 30-minute book. So I think it says here 0.5 hours, maybe five. Is this saying 5 hours? Okay, I don't know. So simple reporting is about simple reporting structure that works, simple enough that you can have all your team members read it. I recommend that you do. Some of it is obviously dated. Ignore those parts. High output management and the Grove 10 hour, another 10 hours. The classic tech management book, a lot more detail than 1 minute manager, but essentially the same structure. Okay, so if you can't read high output management, you can read the 1 minute manager. I think I'll take 1 minute manager and just do a review of high output management. The hard thing about hard things, Ben Horowitz, 6 hours, says how great high output management is, and then talks about what to do in some very specific and ugly situations that no other books discuss. So we want to add this one to our read list too. So let's do this one. 1 minute manager. Um, So you have sales, sales and marketing, disciplined entrepreneurship. So painful, but very necessary step-by-step guide to determining who your real customer is, what solution they want, and how to market and sell to them. If you only read and apply one of these books, make it this one. If you only read and apply one of these books, make it this one. Okay. Wow. Make it this one. That's a higher recommendation than it gives to the other books. Okay, Disciplined Entrepreneurship by Bill Ollett, 12 hours. Okay, Never Split the Difference. This is seminal work on negotiation, ostensibly about negotiation, but really about how to create deep connection and trust quickly, which is the key to an excellent relationship with your three key constituents: customers, that open and close bracket sales, employees, open and close bracket management, and investors, open and close brackets fundraising. We treated that in, was it 20 chapter 28 or 29? This is the best book on sales that I have found. Never Split the Difference. This one is the best book on sales that I have found. So to learn more about sales, I'd have to read that one. So recruiting, who? Excellent recruiting process that maximizes the likelihood of hiring A players only, and then ensuring their success at the company. And culture, the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership by Diana Chapman. 10 hours. Companies can become good using the hard skills outlined in the books above. To become great, a company must become curious and open to learning. This books, this books, this book shows how to do that. Okay. Um, who we want to read who, because we also want to understand a bit more about the recruitment process. Then the commitment of conscious leadership. Then we are going to, companies can become good using their hard skills. So this one is about people skills. So if you're going to read who, you also want to read this one. The summaries linked, the summaries linked above are poor representations of the books themselves, as the summaries give the basic steps recommended, but not the details of why. I like I like to learn a lot about why, because if you know why, you the chances that you would ever forget the how will be slim. But if you know how, you can always forget how or just mumble the process, the step-by-step process. But if you know why, you have each process in that way, then chances that you forget your how will be slim. Even if you forget the nomenclature for how, like semantics, you might miss a bit of one or two semantics, but you will get a core thing because you understand the philosophy, the science of thought behind it. So why is one of the things that are very important to me, and that was why I started reading this book in the first place. I could have read any other book on just being an executive assistant, but I wanted to read The Great CEO Within because I wanted to understand the why behind why great CEOs would be doing whatever they're doing, so that if you are in the position as an executive assistant, which is a very tactical, task-based thing, they always give you a list of things that you want to do 30, 60, 90 days, but you can just do it and that would be it. But to really get to do it in such a way that ties your brain into loving the process and loving the solutions that the CEO and the team are working hard at, you need to understand the why behind the things that the CEO does and how the CEO approaches things. And the great CEO within, exposing me to all of the things that we've been talking about, even though I don't understand some of these things for now, on just the surface, on just reading this book, the more I looking back now, if I get to watch the next episode of Shark Tank, I think I would see more clearly what's going on than I did previously, even though I loved it previously. But I think it will help me see more clearly. And then as I proceed having more conversations with CEOs till I eventually land the next contract, it also opens my eye to understand the approach and the preferences CEOs have. So that's why I wanted to read this book, because why is very important. As a virtual assistant, you will not always know why, but if you read a book like this, it prepares your mindset and gets you to see some of the whys behind some of the things the CEO would do. Okay, so please force yourself to read all of the books above in its entirety. You won't regret it. It's going to take me a while to get to read all of the books in its entirety, but if I'm going to start, because it says if there is one book you should read, it should be Disciplined Entrepreneurship. And in this list of books, you have Disciplined Entrepreneurship as the longest. Maybe I wouldn't start with Disciplined Entrepreneurship. Who knows? But 1 Minute Manager, I just love this 1 Minute Manager thing. And the fact that it talks about how you can get your team to 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 work around to work together, and especially on simple reporting structure that works. And the reason I also want to read Disciplined Entrepreneurship is because of the high recommendation it gives to it. And in Disciplined Entrepreneurship, we alluded like 3 times to it in this chapter. So it says it's painful but necessary step-by-step guide to determining who your real customer is, what solution they want, and how to market and sell to them. If you only read one book, let it be this one. I never split the difference because it's on negotiation. I want to get better at negotiating. It's one of the concepts that has completely come back to my head, negotiating. And I think that now business is simply a negotiation of value. All business transactions are a negotiation of value. For the customer, the value is what they get. For the company, the value is what you get from the customer. So a book like Negotiation is ultra important in sales and marketing. So I'm also going to read that one. So I think we've come to the end of chapter 30, and now you have acknowledgements. Now, let's make this the longest. Let's make this the longest of all the videos that I would have done so far. So in making it the longest, we have to do the longest reading. So Appendix G. I said I was going to read Appendix G. So to become the best CEO that you can be, your life must be in balance with your personal life optimized as well. There are several personal issues that regularly crop up in the lives of CEOs that I coach. Here are 3 those issues and their solutions. Sleep. Many CEOs that I coach find that they sleep far less now than they did before they were running a company. For some, that means waking up in the middle of the night thinking about an issue or to do. For others, that means going to sleep late to finish emails and then being woken up by the alarm clock to make it to their first meeting. Either way, the elusive full night of sleep becomes a distant memory. Those CEOs feel that their bodies are wearing down and soon they will break in the same way. If this is happening to you, here are the important things to know. This is totally normal. There is nothing wrong with you. Your body is very resilient. It will not break so easily. I regularly get somewhere between 3 to 6 hours of sleep each night. I think this has been the journey. This is February, and this is roughly the journey for me since I started doing these videos. It's like 3 to 6 hours of sleep because as I'm reading this, I'm thinking of this. I'm also thinking of other things that I need to do for my personal brand, the websites, the portfolio, the YouTube, the designs that I am creating to support my applications and so on. So a lot of I'm getting lesser sleep, but um, as at the time of recording this video, in the last 24 hours, I just told myself I'm going to get more sleep. And immediately I woke up from having a little more sleep. I just started this recording. So sleep is very important. We just in the early days, especially when you're trying to figure things out, you have less sleep. But I think for me personally, when I'm getting to a point where I'm not thinking clearly, my energy is reducing. I just take a little more sleep for that point, and then have a knee-jerk reaction to getting things going again. So um, we're not going to read this as we've done, but it just essentially talks about sleep. So sleep position: face down, one leg raised at 90 degrees angle, Tim Ferriss. Sleep surface, memory foam bed, biomat. The room, blackout shades. Rituals, meditate several minutes just prior to going to bed. Orgasm, yes, it helps. Uh, okay, I'm not going to talk about that. But if you're married, just have a lovely moment with your wife. And one of the things I've learned recently is good marriage is a blessing. Like the science of it is has been discussed for centuries, but whole thing, good marriage is a blessing. A good wife who understands the operations and everything is going to be supportive and just support you through everything. So liquidity. If your company truly succeeds, you will likely find yourself equity rich, but still cash poor. It is important to create liquidity and diversify out of your company's stock. The general rule of thumb is that you should have no more than 25% of your net worth in alternative assets, illiquidified assets, because your company's equity is likely the majority of your net worth. Your net worth is likely 95% greater greater than 95% alternative assets. It will close to impossible. It will be close to impossible to sell 75% of your stake in your company. Instead, know that there are two absolute numbers that are significant: $10 million and $100 million. Most people at $10 million of liquid net worth have the feeling of safety. They breathe a sigh of relief. They are no longer at risk. However, once they sit and once they sit with that number for a while and start to raise a family, their mind begins to play through disaster scenarios of how that net worth could disappear completely. Once their liquid net worth grows past 100 million, the catastrophe scenarios dry up and sense of abundance flows. This is what you are driving for. It says the number is 10 million or 100 million. Reality is that 10 million is more than enough to live a wonderful life, but give the mind what it wants. After $100 million, each additional dollar will likely not add in any way to your life, but may well create a burden. If you buy assets that need to be maintained and supervised, therefore, as soon as your company's equity begins to have significant value, begin to sell to secondary shareholders until you have sold 10 to $100 million. The bank versus brokerage and investing. Okay, let's read this. Now that the money is in a safe place, How do I invest it? David Swanson is the chief investment officer for the Yale University Endowment. He's considered the grandfather of portfolio management. He wrote a book specifically for the individual investor called Unconventional Success. I consider it the Bible for individual asset management. In it, he convincingly describes how professional money managers' ability to create alpha is exceedingly rare. And if they exist, you likely will never meet them. The money managers you do encounter will likely never create for you positive net returns after they siphon off their fees and carry interest when compared to the public equity markets. Therefore, the best approach is for you to simply invest in low-cost index funds, e.g. Vanguard, according to a specific allocation. He recommends about 30% US equities, 30% non-US equities, 5% real estate, and 25% US treasuries, and then rebalance as often as possible. Unfortunately, rebalancing means putting in lots of trades, and that is painful. Luckily, someone built a tool to solve that problem. Wealthfront is the leading auto rebalancing investment engine. Many others have copied it, but as of 2018, it's still my preferred vehicle. So let's highlight that part because that's where the key point is. And then Wealthfront recommends Wealthfront. Okay, and that brings us to the end of this book. Has it been a journey? Has it been long? This is the first time I'm doing a video like this, reading. Usually when I want to read a book and it's long, I just turn on the audio. Once I have the book, I turn on the audio and I just do audio reading. I did 88 books, over 88 books in 2023. It was the year that I had my most read books. And this year, I think I'm going to do a little bit more of that. I have a project that is going to shape, like transform my approach to work and the niche within which I work. That would require me to listen to 300 audio podcasts, about 300 audio podcasts by the grace of God this year. So that's going to be a whole lot of reading and listening and ideating and working and doing analysis, creating stuff, and so on and so forth. But the point remains that reading a book does something to your life. 2013 was one of my best years in the last 5 years. I think in part because of the number of books I read. I just had confidence that I was taking greater risks because of the things I was reading. Have they all paid off? No, but I do not regret anything from 2023. Do I have some regrets in 2024? Yes, maybe I do. Because I did, it's sort of like I went so high of 23 books. And then 2023, 2024, I didn't do up to 10 books, I think. And 2023, the last 5 years, 2022 was really good. 2023 was also very good. 2024, not so good. 2025, not so good. I didn't read so many books. But as I started towards the end of 2025, I just said, you know what, I've had enough of this. Go high up and then come down. You're going high up towards excellence and then you just come down towards mediocrity. And I said, all of this has to change. We have to hide things up and combine all of the best things that have happened in the last 5 years and try to make it happen into one. And the universe said yes. And the church said amen. And God said, yes, you have my blessing. So by God's grace, we've done this, and it has taken so much of just concentration and waking up. I had to change some practices, how early I wake up, how late I go to bed to make this work. So I'm happy that I've completed this. The views are coming in now, and they're like one, two, one, two. And at the end of the day, I'm just happy I have this in the archive, like through YouTube. If nothing happens with this, it's going to be in the archives somewhere. But have I done something that I set out to do? And I'm blessed that I've done it, and I'm happy that I've done it. Yes. Will it have the effect of becoming a blockbuster? I don't know. That is a secondary matter. But if you've been on this journey with me and you've been watching from when I started till now, I just want to say in advance of you watching this one that thank you for watching. And I wish you the very best, whether you're CEO, you're a virtual assistant, or you're just someone who is trying to change your life and you just stumbled on this video, and I want to encourage you to also read more books. If you can read a book per week, that was what I wanted to do in 2023, read a book per week. That would have been 52 books. But then I did more than 52 books, and that was like 83 books. And it's opened my mind to a whole lot of things that I wish I had stuck with and not go back on. So if you've followed me through this journey, please continue. Will it change your life like immediately? Maybe not. Maybe to take a gradual process. But something remarkable will be happening to you because you're reading books. As I'm reading these books and paying attention to many other creative things, I'm also paying attention to my spiritual life, and they complement in the same way. So I wish you the very best, and you have my best wishes. And I pray that this experience does something remarkable to you, and as it has done for me, and I'm believing that is the case. So thanks for watching. See you in the next series. God bless.